Today, we're going to dive into a chilling story from the mid-2000s that really shook the core of American families. This case was so big that it was everywhere in the news. It was a crime so awful that it made headlines across the country and had everyone talking. A woman named Michelle, who was heavily pregnant with her second child, was found brutally beaten to death and lying in a pool of her own blood in the living room of her own house. Despite evidence of her husband being away on a business trip during that fateful night, he quickly became the prime suspect, due mainly to the problems the couple were having. The investigation into this terrible crime took several years. The detectives and police officers worked tirelessly, trying to crack the case and bring the person responsible to justice. However, it was not an easy task. The evidence didn't seem to add up, and the motive behind the crime wasn't clear. That was, of course, until it was discovered that Jason, the husband's name, had been carrying on an affair with another woman. However, one of the biggest challenges in solving this case was the disbelief that the man in question could have committed such a horrific act. He didn't fit the usual profile, and there were no clear signs that he was capable of such a thing. This disbelief was a roadblock in the investigation, slowing down the process and causing a lot of confusion. The investigation dragged on for almost 6 long years. During that time, the investigators gathered pieces of evidence, interviewed witnesses, and tried to put together the puzzle that was this crime. It was a long and arduous process, but they remained determined to uncover the truth. But what exactly happened? Why was this crime so horrible for all the parties involved? And why did it take so long to solve? Let's explore all of that in this video. A suspicious night. It was early November, and Michelle was expecting 5 months into her pregnancy. Jason, her husband, was supposed to be away on a business trip. What unfolded next was nothing short of terrifying. Michelle's sister decided to visit the house and walked into a nightmare. Michelle had been brutally beaten and smothered to death. There was no evidence of who could have done something like that, and the witness, who was completely oblivious that there might have been any trouble in Michelle's relationship, was extremely shocked. Of course, Jason acted very surprised when he heard the news. There wasn't enough evidence to arrest him, and honestly, apparently, there was no reason to make him the primary suspect. He was supposed to be away on a business trip, and the couple apparently had a good relationship, so he was in the clear at first. The investigation dragged on for months, and it seemed like justice would never be served. But finally, after careful investigation by local authorities and state police, some evidence started to surface. And it completely changed the way the police were looking at the case. Who was Marie Young? Michelle Marie Young, a New York native born in February 1977, was a woman with ambition and drive. She had a keen interest in law and economics, which led her to pursue a career in these fields. After putting in the hard work and dedication, she earned her master's degree, a big achievement that opened up many opportunities for her. With her master's degree in hand, Michelle embarked on her professional journey. She landed a job at a top-notch accounting firm, where she used her skills and knowledge to make a difference. She was a dedicated employee, always ready to take on challenges and push her boundaries. As she was making strides in her career, love found its way into her life. She met Jason, and what started as a chance encounter turned into a whirlwind romance. Their paths crossed in the most unexpected way, and they found themselves caught up in the excitement and joy of new love. Who was Jason? Jason was born into a regular family in 1974. His childhood was much like any other kid's, filled with memories of school, friends, and family outings. After finishing high school, he decided to take the next step in his education and got himself enrolled at the well-known State University in Raleigh. His time at the university was a period of growth and learning. He immersed himself in his studies, explored new ideas, and made lasting friendships. It wasn't always easy, but Jason's determination saw him through, and he eventually graduated, ready to start his professional life. After graduation, Jason landed a job as a salesman at a large retail chain. That was when he first met Michelle. As you can see, Jason was apparently a completely ordinary man. so nobody suspected any foul play from him at first. But how did things between them turn so wrong? How things got wrong between them? At first, Jason and Michelle's love story was one for the books. Their relationship blossomed quickly, and it wasn't long before they found themselves deeply in love. So, when Michelle found out she was pregnant, she faced a tough decision. She wasn't ready for a baby yet, being busy with her career, but she loved Jason very much and would be very happy creating a new life with him. After careful consideration, and despite all the challenges having a kid can bring, she chose to keep the baby. So, after 9 months, the couple welcomed their daughter, whom they named Cassidy Elizabeth, into the world with open hearts. They bought their own house and started building their dream life together. Life seemed perfect with their little family, but like any other couple, they had their ups and downs. And sadly, the first signs of trouble appeared not too long after they settled into their new home. Tensions began to surface within their marriage, casting a shadow over their once happy home. It all began when Michelle's family started noticing changes in Jason. He was becoming emotionally volatile, which was unlike his usual self. They could see the strain. The new baby was putting on the couple's relationship, but they hoped it was just a phase that would pass. Michelle's second pregnancy. In 2006, a new person entered Jason and Michelle's lives. Their mutual friend, Michelle Mani, became a regular part of their social circle. As time passed, it became evident that her relationship with Jason was more than just a friendship. This new development brought about a change in the dynamics between Jason and Michelle. Michelle Young found out she was pregnant again, an event that should have been a cause for joy and celebration. However, this time around, the news was met with a different reaction, as Jason's response was far from joyful. The news of the pregnancy added another layer of strain to their already tense relationship. Jason was obviously infatuated with Michelle Mani, and he wasn't exactly happy about having a second baby with his wife. The presence of Michelle Mani and the change in Jason's behavior towards Michelle Young's pregnancy raised questions among Michelle's family members. It was clear that their marriage was going through a tough phase, and the once happy couple was now dealing with issues that were driving a wedge between them. Of course, as the pregnancy continued its course, Jason's growing relationship with Michelle Mani became a challenge for their marriage. It was simply not the same as before, and what were they going to do once the new baby arrived? After all, raising a second kid with a new partner on the horizon was not something Jason or Michelle had planned on. The joy and happiness that once filled their home were slowly being replaced with tension and unease. The situation was causing a lot of stress for Michelle Young, who was dealing with her pregnancy amidst all this. The once strong and loving relationship between Jason and Michelle was strained due to these developments. The introduction of a third person into their lives and the lack of support during Michelle's pregnancy had a significant impact on their relationship. It was a difficult time for Michelle, who had to grapple with these challenges while expecting their second child. The events that happened on the night of the murder. Let's get back to our main story. On the fateful night of Michelle Young's death, the scene was gruesome and deeply tragic. Michelle, who was pregnant at the time, had been brutally beaten in her own bedroom. Her lifeless body was discovered lying in a pool of blood as her sister went to check in on her since she was alone due to Jason being away on a business trip. So, when she arrived at the couple's house, she found a sight that sent shockwaves through their community and beyond. And it gets worse. Apparently, Michelle's death was not the result of a single act of violence, but of a severe and sustained assault. The autopsy revealed she died from blunt force trauma after being hit at least 10 times in the head during a struggle. This level of violence pointed to a crime driven by intense rage and personal animosity. Of course, given the rough patch they had been going through, the primary suspect in Michelle's murder was her husband. However, despite the circumstantial evidence, it took years for the case to reach its conclusion, as he had been able to cover his tracks quite well. A Wake County jury found Jason Young guilty of first-degree murder more than 5 years after Michelle's death. This verdict brought some measure of justice to Michelle's grieving family and friends, who had waited for years to see her killer brought to justice. Despite the conviction, the brutality of Michelle's death continues to haunt those who knew her. The murder case serves as a grim reminder of the horrifying violence that can lurk behind closed doors, even in seemingly ordinary homes. Michelle's tragic end underscores the urgent need for society to take domestic violence seriously and protect vulnerable individuals. What was Jason's alibi? Jason quickly became the primary suspect in her brutal murder. However, it was his alibi that raised eyebrows among investigators. He claimed that he was out of town on a business trip in Virginia on the night of the murder. Moreover, he insisted he had spent the night in a hotel and was not in their home when the crime occurred. However, detectives were able to poke holes in his alibi. A detailed investigation revealed that Jason had checked into the hotel, but there was evidence that suggested he might have left afterward. Was this just a way for him to cover his tracks? And after a bit more research, it was proven that he hadn't really spent the night there. Surveillance footage showed him leaving the hotel in the middle of the night, only to return the next morning. This raised doubts about Jason's claims of being away from home at the time of the murder. Moreover, inconsistencies were found in the details of his alibi. It was discovered that a side door at the hotel, which was supposed to be locked, was found propped open. This suggested a premeditated plan by Jason to leave the hotel without being noticed, further implicating him in the crime. The case saw a turning point when Jason was charged with first-degree murder, years after Michelle's body was found. The mounting evidence against him, coupled with his shaky alibi, led to his conviction. A Wake County jury found Jason guilty of first-degree murder more than 5 years after the incident, providing some measure of justice to Michelle's grieving family and friends. Despite his insistence on his innocence and his attempts to appeal for a new trial, Jason Young's bid was denied. The court upheld the conviction, cementing Jason's role in the horrific crime. What was the aftermath of the crime? So 5 years after the horrible event had taken place, justice was served. Jason Young was sentenced to spend the rest of his life behind bars, with no chance of parole. This marked the end of a long and arduous journey for those seeking justice for Michelle and her unborn child. While it didn't bring them back, it offered some closure to their loved ones. And what happened to the couple's first child? As you can imagine, Cassidy was taken in by Jason's parents and raised away from the spotlight. Thankfully, they were able to provide a supportive home for the toddler, who had been so tragically affected by his mother's untimely death. In conclusion, the story of Michelle's tragic murder and the subsequent pursuit of justice for her and her unborn child is a chilling reminder of the dark side of humanity. The conviction of Jason Young brought some closure to those affected by this heinous crime, but it could never fully erase the pain and loss that was inflicted. If you have a passion for true crime and want to continue exploring these captivating stories, make sure to subscribe to our channel. By doing so, you'll be notified whenever we share more intriguing and thought-provoking true crime tales. Stay tuned and keep seeking the truth.